you need somebody that can go deep into the data, but then can also pull out and see the strategy.
Yeah.
So how do you understand customer behaviors by looking at numbers? Not a lot of people can do that. And that's where and it's always so hard to hire for his team, because he always wants people that are badass at SQL. And
Right.
most CSMs are not. So that would be the first thing that I would recommend for people who are looking to get it more into digital, is really brush up on your Excel skills, because it's not about talking to customers.
And once again, welcome to the Digital Customer Success Podcast with me, Alex Turkovich. So glad you could join us here today and every week as I seek out and interview leaders and practitioners who are innovating and building great scaled CS programs. My goal is to share what I've learned and to bring you along with me for the ride so that you get the insights that you need to build and evolve your own digital CS program. If you'd like more info, want to get in touch, or sign up for the latest updates, go to digitalcustomersuccess.com. For now, let's get started. Greetings and welcome to the Digital Customer Success Podcast. This is episode number 36. It's actually an off-cycle bonus episode for the week if you are listening to it live. And I wanted to bring this conversation to you sooner rather than later because it is a bit of a timely one. Today's guest is Sara Roberts of Bayview Talent. She is she basically runs a talent staffing agency, a recruiting agency that focuses on building and scaling customer success teams. So she's super niche and has a lot of great things to say about that. But the reason why, obviously the conversation is timely is because we all know what a tough market it is out there. There's lots of folks looking for gigs. And 23 was pretty rough on tech and customer success. So Sara shares some wonderful insights about the current job market and just recruiting in CS in general. But add to that, there is a mystique that surrounds staffing a digital customer success team or a scaled customer success team. In that, a lot of folks seem to think that they can just kind of throw junior CSMs into a scaled team, or they may not exactly know what type of talent they need to really build out a solid digital team. And so Sara and I spend quite a bit of time talking through what kind of profiles you're looking for when it comes to building a digital team. So a lot of very timely and a lot of very important information that I didn't want to sit on and I wanted to publish as soon as I could. So please enjoy this conversation with Sara Roberts, because I sure did. Well, should we talk about actual stuff or?
Sure. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. This is the first time I've been on this side of it. I'm usually asking the questions.
Right. I was subjected to that experience a couple times in the last few weeks, and it's a little bit different. It's a different vibe. And I kept wanting to take control of this.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's different. It's different. But I'm really pleased to have you on the show.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. And I'm curious to see how you do the intros, or the kind of first part of the podcast, because I find that mine are always a little awkward. It takes a minute to get into it, and
totally.
The good stuff.
It's never not awkward.
Okay, good.
It's always awkward.
It's not just me.
And but part of me is well, that's the stuff that makes it kind of human, because there's so many shows that are somewhat scripted, and I don't want to do that. Yeah. We don't play that.
Yeah.
So, but look, what's funny is I was thinking a little bit, prior to the show, we actually first met. I don't know when it was. It was a while ago, because you're it was
mid last year, maybe.
Maybe, I don't know. I think it was Yeah. So we had talked about a role, and what I loved about that, there's recruiters you talk to that are just kind of like recruiters, and then there's recruiters you talk to that are like awesome people. And that's what I gleaned from our conversation, because you were real with me
Yeah.
about it. And it was like,
Yeah.
you were real with me, and it didn't work out for whatever reason, but, it was cool because, that left an impression out when, I saw you started your podcast, which is Success Unscripted, which I love. I'm a huge fan of the show. I was like, oh, Sara Roberts, right? Connected the dots, and it's cool that you're doing it. So congrats on
Yeah.
the show as well.
Thanks.
So tell me a little bit about, just kind of what. So for those that don't know, right, Bayview Talent is your recruiting agency. You focus primarily on kind of building CS teams and helping to grow CS teams a
Yeah.
little bit, but give us a little bit of the genesis of that, like what got you into there, and what kind of niched you into CS.
Yeah. So it's kind of an interesting story. I've never actually worked in customer success.
Mm-hmm.
um, I started my career actually in marketing at a
Yeah.
tech company. I grew up in the Bay Area, and then like briefly did a stint at a recruiting agency, and then I got into sales. And
Yeah.
and the recruiting that I do is there's a lot of sales to it. It's more sales than
Sure.
HR, I would say.
Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah.
and I worked at Zenefits. That was my first sales job. And
Mm-hmm.
they grew from 54 to 1,100 employees in the year that I was there.
In
And
1 year.
yeah. And
Jesus.
yeah, it was like at the time it was the fastest growing tech company in the history of Silicon Valley. And it was great.
Mm-hmm.
And I, got to know Parker when it was really small. I used to sit next to him, um, and then, it grew and grew and grew. And I was doing very well there. I want to say it was like October of 20, see, 20, I think 2015, 2014, maybe. I was 192% to
Mm-hmm.
quota. And so we're selling these insurance plans. Basically, you become the broker of record,
Yeah.
and that's the way that Zenefits at the time got their revenue. But then we're
Mm-hmm.
also having to get them through open enrollment. So it's October. I have all of these customers that I've closed, and then I'm also doing. So this is November. Actually, I'm doing hour-long back-to-back demos, 8 of them every single day. Could never get my inbox past or lower than 50. And
Brutal.
while we had scaled the sales team, we didn't really scale the post-sales team. And
Mm-hmm.
so it usually took about 6 weeks to get an implementation manager assigned to an account. And those implementation managers were the ones that really set them up in the system, but also took them through open enrollment and helped them with their benefits plans.
Right.
So after 8 hours of demos and trying to get through my inbox, I'm also helping my customers that I've already closed the month before go through open enrollment. And I'll never forget,
Jeez.
there was one account in Texas. I think the guy's name was Paris, and it was a small account. It was only like 5 people, but he was on United Healthcare. And
Mm-hmm.
because at the time we didn't have territories, we were selling across the country with all different carriers, and they all have different rules. And UHC, for some reason, their open enrollment happens 2 months before it normally happens, and so we missed open enrollment. And he was so
Yeah.
pissed, as he should have been. He was like, "My wife is pregnant, and I probably would have stayed on these
Oh
plans,
man.
but I wanted the opportunity to, at least see." And so that kept me up at night. It was like just
Yeah.
ridiculously stressful. But that was the first time I really started to understand the importance of taking care of your customers once you sell them, right? And
Yeah. Right.
and I always became friends with like the implementation managers and the CSMs and the account managers and all of that, and was also really curious about that handoff and kind of the deal desk stuff in Salesforce and whatever. So
Yeah.
that sparked my interest. I then worked at a couple of other startups in sales, And then got back into recruiting. I was working for Hunter SF. They place investment professionals at private equity and venture capital firms primarily. But I realized I wanted to work with tech companies again. And I had brought on a couple of clients. So I decided that, or a couple of tech clients while I was there, and they encouraged that. But I kind of decided I wanted to start my own thing. So 2019, I founded Bayview, and I knew I wanted to have some sort of specialty. And I knew I wanted to do go to market because that's what I know: marketing, sales, customer success. And I actually hired a guy to do some market research and called a bunch of different VCs. And we realized that nobody was doing customer success. Nobody was focused on customer success. You have Bets and Lions and all these different companies that are really focused on sales and do a little bit of marketing. But at the time, there wasn't, it was almost kind of a new thing. Like, it had been around for, 5-10 years, but like, it was just, people didn't understand it as well as they do today, which is not saying much. But so I reached out to Parker, and this is when Rippling had just raised a $45 million Series A, and they had one CSM but needed 5 more. And so I found those 5 CSMs within like 6 weeks, and then it just kind of snowballed from there. And fast forward, I've placed like over 60 people at 15 different startups. So just as a result of having so many conversations with candidates and hiring managers of what are you looking for, but then on the candidate side, like, what are you doing? How are you building your teams? What systems are you using? What's worked, what hasn't worked? That's really been helped me get a really good understanding of the market, and also advise my clients on market compensation and what should you actually be looking for in this role. So it's been really fun.
Yeah. That's so cool. Yeah. I love that story and kind of the genesis, and kudos for actually, to you for actually doing market research to figure out, where the need was. But I love that about you, just, asking the questions and, getting beyond, this is the job description, go.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, I like to close deals, so.
Yeah, exactly.
Not messing around.
Exactly. Well, I mean, the reason why, at first glance, it may seem odd to the listener that we're chatting on the podcast, but actually, I'm crazy excited to chat with you today, because I think that one of the major questions that I get very, very frequently is, okay, you've decided to, build a digital function team and all that kind of stuff. Okay. Okay, how do we hire people for this role? Like, what is this thing? What does a scaled team do? And who do I need to run my digital CS team and whatnot? And it's a bit of a mystery out there. And so I'm hoping, through our conversation that we can kind of dispel the myths a little bit, because, there are some pretty unique approaches that I've seen out there, but there's also kind of some standardization of what it is that a lot of people are building with scale teams, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I guess let's start a little bit from an industry, state of the industry kind of perspective, right? Especially from the recruiting point of view, because it's no secret. I mean, everybody's been talking about it, that it's rough out there. There's lots of people looking for gigs.
Yeah.
Layoffs are still happening.
Yeah.
And it's kind of dicey out there. And, my heart and, definitely goes out to folks who are on the prowl and have been affected. And so, give us a sense for where we are today. This is January of 24, which is weird to say, but where are we today?
Excuse me. I have a 2-year-old, so I may be coughing.
Yeah, totally.
So if you had asked me that question a month ago, my answer would be different.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing. Last year was rough.
Brutal.
I mean, I'm used to literally turning down clients because I don't have enough bandwidth, and getting recommendations from CEOs and VCs, and because I also typically work with earlier stage, so Series A. And prior to last year, if you get a large investment, you're making promises to the board that you're going to accomplish all of these different things. And so growth is, and hiring the right people quickly is absolutely required in order to meet those goals. And so prior to last year, as a recruiter, it was awesome, and everybody was hiring. They had the budget to pay for recruiters, which I get paid a percentage of a candidate's first year's base salary.
Yeah.
And last year it was absolutely crickets. I had a couple of searches with my client Keeper in the beginning of the year, and then I worked with a bootstrapped company for a little while that I met when I was doing a keynote in New York, and we didn't end up finding the right person. But other than that, like I basically, like, my business was like, it was non-existent essentially, which you can imagine how that feels.
Sure.
And I just, and I made the decision, I'm not going to do business development. I'm not going to actively reach out to these companies because they don't need me right now. Like, conserving cash and extending your runway is the most important thing for these companies, not growth. And so even if they have open roles and companies were hiring, they're not going to pay me 25% of a candidate's first year base salary. They're going to have the hiring manager do that. So, so it was pretty rough, but I'll tell you, you're catching me on a really good week. Just brought on my first big search in like a year, with my client Gorgeous, who I've placed like 30 people there. Just absolutely love working with them. Elise, the VP of Success, was episode 3, I think, of Success Unscripted. So helping them with the director of customer success search. I might help them with another one if this one candidate doesn't work out, and then also potentially a head of revenue. And then I have 2 other clients that are waiting in the wings as well. So I've also been hearing, seeing on LinkedIn that, I've been hearing other recruiters posting, and recruiters have had it really rough. I mean, half of Sequoia's talent team was laid off last year, and they're one of the top VCs.
Unreal.
I mean, this just doesn't happen. It's the worst recession that tech has been in since ever, even 2008. So, so it's good. I think this year, knock on wood, nothing crazy happens globally. I think things are going to be really, really, really different for everyone.
Yeah. I love to hear that, because obviously, if recruiters are busier, that means the job market is looking more favorable, which is good.
Yeah.
It's a good sign overall. So, I mean, look, you started Success Unscripted, year, like a few months ago. But and a big part of it was out of just being slow,
having a lot of time on my hands,
kind of do some stuff. I'm sure that was part of it, but also, what was the impetus behind Success Unscripted?
So by February of last year, I realized that it was going to be slow for a while. And I actually tried to start another business. I mean, there are so many businesses I've started that have failed. I mean, I could name them all, but this one was called, I mean, if you're an entrepreneur, that's just, that's how it goes. So I started this business, or had the idea, and went pretty deep in it for a while, called Rocket Launch. And the purpose was, I'm fascinated by what makes people thrive. When I'm talking to an A player, or someone who has just skyrocketed their career. What is it about them? And my belief is that those are the people that are able to find roles that really align with their passions and where they're excited to wake up in the morning. And none of us like every single aspect of our jobs, but if you can get into like that state of flow, like 30% of the time, you're going to be far more successful than doing something that you don't enjoy. So taking that idea and thinking about our education system and how, like, when you're a college senior and you go to a job fair, it's like, if you leave the job fair with a job, it's like, yes, I did it, like I did it. And that's the goal. And there's no real conversation about, okay, what do these career paths look like? What is, what's the day to day? What skills are required? How much money do they make? So I've talked about mental health a lot on my podcast as well. My goal was, or the thinking was, I could help college students understand what their options are, people a couple years out of college, so that they could pursue careers that are more in line with what they love to do and what they're good at and what they want to learn more of. So I did a ton more market research, and I talked to a lot of marketers. I talked to a lot of people that are in the education space. I know the guy heading up CS at USF, spoke with, he got me in touch with a professor, and talked to a lot of parents and a lot of students. And what I discovered was the problem existed, but it was going to be really hard to actually monetize this because, college students are very, flaky, and they have a million things going on, and they're not going to sit down and actually do that, most of them. And their parents aren't much easier to lock down. And I don't know if I would have really actually enjoyed creating the curriculum, because I kind of took a stab at it. But what Success Unscripted is very much a evolution of that, because part of the course was going to be bringing in people that are inspiring to me and that have had interesting careers, and asking them the same questions that I'm asking on the podcast. And so I actually found this note in my Notion to-do list that I wrote about a year ago. Like, I need to start creating content and interviewing people, but like, I wish I could just, like, I was so against it because I'm not a content person. And then I was like, you know what, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to do it. And I did my first one, and it's been really interesting. And the focus is, I always say, the what is customer success, but the why is all that other stuff that I'm talking about, and helping people really find their passion, because I believe that, one, you cannot separate your mental health from your work, and two, my experience of white knuckling it through all of these different jobs is not uncommon. And so, so I
workplace trauma is a real thing. Like, it's not something that is, I think more and more people are talking about it now, which is great. And especially, post pandemic, and with all the layoffs that have been happening and all that kind of stuff, like, finally there is a focus on mental health and workplace trauma. But I mean, honestly, the couple of decades I spent just like grinning and bearing stuff, the circles under my eyes are direct results of that. And many people, it's like, it's a real thing. And so, I love that you're highlighting those things. And I want to go back to one thing that you said just earlier around our education, system around jobs and careers. It's so messed up. I remember I'm an old fart. So like, I remember eons ago when I was like in high school, they did these tests, and the tests like scored you on what you were good at in school and stuff like that. And it said, oh, you might be good at this, and you might be good at, had no kind of room for what do you like to do?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
what are the things that like you get up in the morning if you didn't have school or work, what would
Yes.
you be doing, you know, and like
Yes.
what excites you? And it's like there's like no conversation about that. And I think even to this day, it's like you're expected to go to, you know, high school, and then I don't know, college is starting to these days, but you know, like you go to college and then figure out what it is you do, when in reality, like you could figure that out probably way sooner.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's, I mean, that's really the goal. And it's been, I, even after the second episode, that's the one with Mickey where I also drank some wine.
Yeah. Sure. It was a good one.
Yeah. It was a good one. But we both really talked about some hard times in our lives, and you know, suicidal ideation, and I mean, it really went there. And
Yep.
this is my second episode, and a guy reached out to me on LinkedIn and just thanked me for sharing and for naming what it is that he's going through, and also, you know, kind of lifting that burden a little bit, because I think sharing and knowing that you're not alone, and that it's okay to go through those hard times, and they will pass. I always said, if I can help one person with the podcast, then I've done my job. And so it's been really, really fun. I just released the 5th episode today. So we'll see. But like you said, I mean, and thank
That's
you
awesome.
for reaching out after the first couple episodes. I know you said in an email, like, it's really hard, like the vulnerability required to create a podcast and then put it out into the universe, and people are watching it whenever, you know, you don't know who's watching it, when they're watching it, what they're thinking, what they're saying to other people. It's really, really scary. And there were many times where I almost just scrapped the whole thing after I had several episodes recorded.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's a it's a vulnerable thing, and you know, you end up saying stupid shit, and it's like,
yeah,
okay.
yeah,
you almost have to, at least my experience of the whole thing is like you almost have to separate yourself a little bit and just go, yeah, okay, I'm going to be vulnerable for this hour, and then the next hour it takes to edit it and then put it out there and forget about it. But yeah, it's hard.
Yeah.
So kudos to you for ripping off the Band-Aid.
Likewise. Yeah.
I do want to, you know, okay, subject at hand though. I do want to spend a little bit of time talking about CS and specifically like building and scaling digital teams, because I'm just going to start with the assumption that a lot of CS leaders, when they go to start a scale team, which is, I love how you sat up straight. We got to talking about serious stuff. That was funny. But, you know, the assumption that a lot of CS leaders make when they go teams is like, oh, we're just going to stick our junior CSMs into this thing called scaled and just kind of work on that or do that, or, you know, whatever. And it's I think time and time again, it's been proven to not be the correct approach. And we can dig into what those, you know, what that is. But I think fundamentally, like the skill set needed to be part of a digital team and part of a scale team, which are two different things, I would say, are I think vastly different than what your typical CSM, you know, role would be. Wouldn't you say so?
Well, it's certainly different than like an enterprise customer success motion. The traditional high touch, working with 10 customers or less, working with multiple stakeholders and getting that information from the customer from conversations. Yes. Yeah. So I think digital, the smaller the customer, the more digital and just the overall CS strategy start to meld in one and the same. But I do think that the scale motions and the digital CS strategies that you put in place can also aid those enterprise accounts as well.
Totally. Yeah, totally. I mean, you know, I see kind of a trend emerging, and I'm curious to know if you've seen the same thing with your clients, which is to say that if you're gonna go scale CS, there's kind of like two parts of the recipe from a staffing perspective.
Mm-hmm.
One is kind of like this ops thing,
Yeah.
where you've got some people plugged in to build stuff, to, you know, do the data analysis, to do the automations,
SQL and
to, you know,
Python. Yeah.
build. Yeah, exactly. And then, you know, you've got a scaled team, which essentially might be a pooled team, might be
Yes.
regional specific, people who are then taking those automations, reacting to triggers, you know, responding to things and whatnot. But are you seeing the same kind of trend of those two kind of main things as part of a digital
Yes.
strategy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know if I would, I think that's absolutely right. Yes, the ops and then the scale function. And in your definition, the scale is like actually those CSMs that are working with those larger pool of customers, or sometimes there will be multiple CSMs working with, you know, 10,000 customers in a shared inbox or something.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
but I think for me, digital customer success, and I know you ask all of your guests this, but digital CS is really about helping your customers achieve their goals using technology and not the human intervention, and they're partnered together. I think any good digital or any good CS program is going to have a little bit of both and know when to use the technology and when to use the human intervention, but really meeting customers where they are. And customers don't always want to pick up the phone, right? So if they have a question, how are they going to answer it themselves? It could be a chatbot. It could be through email. It could be through self-serve resources, content on the website. So there's that like self-help piece that digital can really that digital can pioneer. I don't know.
Yeah. No,
Podcast.
totally.
And so, but then there's also the that idea of like customer success is about figuring out who your most successful customers are, the ones that are getting the most ROI, utilizing it the most, and utilizing it in the most effective way. So understanding who those customers are, and then creating triggers and incentivize and encouraging behaviors that will make other customers act more like those successful customers. And so that's also a big piece of digital is what is the customer journey? What are those major milestones that the successful customers are hitting, and how do we get others to do that? And there may be multiple customer journeys and different segmentations based on product or size or whatever. But that piece of digital is almost more like marketing. So when I think of digital, there's the more ops, like I often pull people from like consulting or like a Stitch Fix, or Walmart actually has a lot of people that do a lot of this really, really advanced kind of ops digital CS. They typically know SQL. SQL is more for like pulling and analyzing the data. And then Python can help build custom automations. So that's the ops piece. And then you have more of a content writer, right? Which is almost more like marketing, that does the customer education and the self-serve portal. Then you also have people that on that marketing side are understanding how to build marketing campaigns for the existing customers. And then there's all those things that go through that, as like A/B testing and what subject lines are creating more opens and how many clicks. And so there's kind of a science to that. That's a totally different profile as well.
Totally.
And then from there, there's the actual product work. How are they utilizing our product? And ideally you have some product data around like how often are they logging in? What pieces of the product are they using? And then working with product to understand like, okay, we need a chatbot here because people are getting stuck.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
Yeah. So
identifying those key points where customers are being derailed.
Yeah. So and that's what I always say, this is what I love about customer success. And we're just talking digital,
Yeah, for sure.
And there are so many different pieces. And then beyond that, there's implementation and whatever. So, I love talking to my clients about how to build their teams, because it's never a one size fits all. And that's the case.
Totally. Like, that is crazy. Sorry to cut you off, but I'm like crazy passionate about that, because like not everybody, there's a lot of people who think this digital CS thing is like this black box. You take this you buy a template from somebody, you implement it into your org, and then you're done. But that is totally not the case, because there's a crazy amount of variability that goes into it. Not only from a data and a tooling and who are your customers, who are your, personas, what's your product, like the variables are just insane. And so every team has to look different. Otherwise you're not doing it well.
Right. Well said. Yeah. So what I typically do with my clients, just for CS teams in general, but this applies to digital CS specifically, is first analyzing, what do you have, right? Like what systems do you have in place, and who are the people, and what are their strengths? And then where are the gaps, and what are the main KPIs that you're going for? Like, are you having a churn problem? Are you having a product adoption problem? And those will start to inform you of what it is that you should be building. And then that's the cool thing about my job, is that we kind of have a hypothesis of what it is that we need. And then I go out and I start talking to the best of the best. And then sometimes we realize, oh, we actually really need this piece of it. This is the priority. Let's find someone who does this really well. And then we'll start to fill in the other things.
Yeah. I don't want this to come across as a knock against CSMs, because it definitely isn't. But to me, I think a well-staffed digital CS function or ops function is filled with individuals who are probably a lot more strategic thinking and just kind of out of the box and creative than, say, your average CSM, just because you have to iterate a whole lot. You got to figure stuff out as kind of problems and things come your way. And to do that, even old team, you got to think on your toes, think on your feet, light on your feet, think on your toes, quick in the head. I don't know. You got to be able to react quickly to a myriad of situations with customers that you don't like. You got to think strategically about all of this stuff.
Yeah, it's funny that I think the hard piece, and this is something that I used to talk a lot about with Roman, the CEO of Gorgeous, is like, you need somebody that can go deep into the data, but then can also pull out and see the strategy.
Yeah.
So how do you understand customer behaviors by looking at numbers? Not a lot of people can do that. And that's where and it's always so hard to hire for his team, because he always wants people that like are badass at SQL. And most CSMs are not. So that would be the first thing that I would recommend for people who are looking to get it more into digital, is like really brush up on your Excel skills, because it's not about talking to customers. And Yeah, I mean, it was a little bit of a knock on CSMs, I'll say. um,
It's just different,
it's
it's a
different,
different skill set.
and I think it's a totally different skill set.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I think there are different skill sets for each. I mean, the scale CSM that's maybe not doing the automated engagements as much, or maybe they're like
Yeah.
leaning on the digital team to set those
Mm-hmm.
up. The skills there are, being really, really good at time management and being able to
Yeah.
prioritize their day really well, because they're talking to so many different customers, and understanding, okay, is this noisy person is that actually a fire, or are they just noisy?
Right.
And so that's a different skill. And then on the
Mm-hmm.
enterprise account manager side, um, I mean, I always think of my husband. He's in sales at Salesforce, but he has two existing customers that he's looking to
Yeah.
expand. And the conversations that he has, when I was in sales, I was always doing SMB, and I love those, like one call closes, getting to know people like in 5 minutes. Um, he's
Totally.
talking to, I mean, 50 people on the customer side. And then he's also managing a relationship with Accenture and Bain, and then also working with execs within Salesforce. And they all have
Yeah.
different um, priorities. They all have like different side conversations. And so that skill is
Mm-hmm.
something that is unique to enterprise. So
Yeah.
it's all strategic. It's just what type of strategic are you?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what, building teams is all about, is like,
Yeah.
again, what do you love to do and what are you good at? And there's so many different flavors, and they're totally different people.
Yeah. Absolutely. Totally different. Um, and so kind of shifting gears here from maybe more of a career perspective, like again, like I said in the outset, what I loved about our initial conversations was that you were just very focused on the individual. You listened, and then you were honest, and you advised, and you're kind of a very much kind of a partner and a player coach in that way. And so I would venture a guess that you um, are often in a position where you're asked for advice from like CSMs, or you're asked maybe career advice, or how they can get themselves position themselves for their next role and things like that. And so I'm curious if there are any common threads, especially right now, that you
Yeah.
advise a CSM on in terms of their next steps.
Yeah, there are two things. So for the person who is in a role that they like, but they maybe want to get to the next level, or they want to specialize in a specific thing
Mm-hmm.
within CS, or make a transition into ops or whatever, um, the best thing that you can do is take on projects. Take
Yeah.
the initiative, think of ideas, find areas within the company that can be improved, and then go to your manager, go to the CEO if it's small, and say, I think we need to do this, and this is how I think we should do it.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the best candidates I've worked with, and that end up doing really cool things with their careers, it always started with them taking the initiative, and finding inefficiencies, and then spearheading a project, and maybe getting funding for it, and then building a team, and then all of a sudden,
Yeah.
you're leading that team. So I think
Yeah.
that's a way to accelerate your career, but also a way to explore new things and figure out, what
Mm-hmm.
do you like to do?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that,
and prove that you're already
yes,
capable of doing the gig. That
yeah,
you put yourself in that position. There's a I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but there's a book that I love to like give people who've asked me these kinds of questions, called Orbiting the Giant Hairball. Have you heard about this book?
no,
It's quite a few years old now, but it's a quick read. It's a good read. Basically it's a guy that was kind of a Hallmark lifer. And if you know Hallmark and corporate
like
culture,
like worked
there's
there forever. Okay.
like the corporate hallmark.
Yeah.
And they weren't necessarily known for being a great culture per se, but
Mm.
he describes how he was able to build this certain program and this certain thing that was a need within the company, kind of without asking for permission to do it, and created this his own identity brand within the company by building this thing and owning this thing. And so he was
Yeah.
able to basically orbit the giant hairball, so to speak. So,
Yeah. I love that.
but that relates exactly to what you were saying.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so that's what I would recommend for people that are currently employed. And
Yeah.
then for people who are looking for a job and maybe struggling to get interviews and find that next role, the biggest thing is taking a step back and really figuring out, if you were a recruiter or a hiring manager and somebody looked at your profile, which types of companies would be like, I gotta hire this person,
Mm-hmm.
right? So a lot of times the easiest one to start with is industry. So if you have insight into the way a certain customer works, whether it's, dev teams or HR, or maybe your company sells a, sales enablement platform, who is the end user that you're working with? Because you know about that industry, you speak their lingo, and you know their priorities. So right off the bat, you have a leg up over other
Mm-hmm.
applicants. And then look for companies that have that same end user. And I always send people to Crunchbase. You can do
Oh,
a,
yeah.
a premium account for a free trial that allows you to use much more filters, and then also be able to export your results. And then you can kind of do a backwards lookup. And you can, even if you have a big spreadsheet and it's taking too much time, like go on Fiverr or what do they call it? The one where you hire people,
Yeah. I
Upwork,
mean,
Upwork,
Upwork or
Upwork.
Fiverr. Yeah.
You can
Upwork.
find
Uh-huh.
somebody
Mm-hmm.
that'll, like, for like $5 an hour will do a lot of the data stuff for you.
Yeah.
And then find those companies, and for God's sake, do not just send in your resume and then like
Mm-hmm.
call it a day,
Mm-hmm.
because like recruiters a lot of times don't even look at resumes. Like
So I
there's
was going to ask you this question because we're in an age where you put up a role and 2 days later you have 1,000
Yeah,
applicants,
and
right?
and I'm also a little bit biased because one of my strengths is sourcing. Like I'm ruthlessly protective over my time, super efficient with my searches, and so I would
Mm-hmm.
prefer to spend time talking to people that I know are almost like a slam dunk than like
Yeah.
talking to people that just because they applied and are interested and like maybe can fit. So
Sure.
excuse me. So
Mm-hmm.
I especially don't like looking through applicants, but every client that I've worked with, and a lot of times I then take over their applicant pool, there are so many that have been sitting there for weeks. And it's because
Mm-hmm.
you just don't want to do it. And especially now when there are so many, it kind of becomes a waste of time almost, because there are so many people that apply that are completely unqualified. So if you find
Yeah.
that company that you are uniquely qualified for, find, like, sometimes it on the job rec, it'll actually say who posted it. But you can pretty easily find out on LinkedIn who manages that team, or maybe there's an internal
Yeah.
recruiter. Send them a real quick note on LinkedIn, like, hey, just want to let you know that I submitted my application for this role. I'm really interested in this company because of XYZ, and I think I could be a good fit because of XYZ. Like, real short,
Yeah.
let me know if you want to talk. Thanks. Don't worry about cover letters. Cover letters, a lot of times, like it's just like people just write a generic cover letter for everybody and then like put in the company. That doesn't look
Yep.
good either. So
Nope.
that, I guarantee, if you're not doing that already and then you start taking that approach, you're going to get way more interviews and you're going to get farther along because you're going to be more qualified for those positions.
Yeah, like get yourself in the system and then go have the conversations with the people that are making the decision, or at least
Yep.
make yourself known. Do you is video like Loom an annoyance in that perspective?
Um,
Like
know. I haven't actually. When companies try to do sales pitches to me, I'm seeing a
Mm-hmm.
lot of Loom. I haven't seen
Mm-hmm.
Loom from candidates. I imagine
Mm-hmm.
that will probably become more common, and it is nice because then you get a sense of their personality, I'm sure. But
Totally.
I would say it could go either way because
Mm-hmm.
especially in startups, like founders and founding teams can be a little bit, oh, we do this way, and so
Right.
they might not like it. But if it's,
Yeah.
say, if you're applying to Loom, absolutely create a Loom. If you're applying
Yeah.
to some other
Exactly.
media company, yes. If it's a like high tech company, maybe not.
Mm-hmm.
But just to circle back, one other thing, we talked about how CSMs are so different. Like a scale CSM is different than a enterprise account manager, is different than a digital CS person. Like I said, industry is the easiest way to start your search in
Mm-hmm.
figuring out who you should apply to or what company you should apply to. But I think that actually the company size, the ACV, is even more important because that's really what
Mm.
drives the type of profile and the skills required for that role. So if you're working with SMBs, maybe you're working with dentists, but there's this company that sells to gyms or something. There's a
Yeah.
strong correlation there. You're working with business
Mm-hmm.
owners, small business owners. So that is another thing to keep in mind as well. Is who is that customer, and then the third thing that we always look for. And again, I work with typically like Series A, Series B. My CEOs and hiring managers want people who have worked in a similar stage as well.
Yeah.
So if you are at a
Totally.
Series B company, another Series B company is going to be more likely to be interested in working with you.
Absolutely. Well, look, I've chewed up a lot of your time, but I've really enjoyed the conversation. As we kind of round things, I always like to ask what's in people's content diet. Like, what are you paying attention to? Books, podcasts, anything like that?
Well, it's a funny question because I don't really listen to podcasts.
Cool.
I don't, I did listen to some of yours, which I really liked. But I don't, from a educating myself on customer success perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, I'm so lucky because I'm talking to the best people all day long. So
Sure. An
that's how I'm
uncommon
learning.
answer. Like a lot of it, when you get to a certain stage and you're talking to certain people, oftentimes the people that you're talking to are the experts.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So that's my
totally
content
get
from a
that.
like CS educational perspective. And then, in my free time, I'm, reading murder mysteries and listening to music and stuff like that, or playing Zelda.
Yeah.
So I don't spend a lot of time
Playing
like,
Zelda.
yeah, I love Zelda.
Like new Zelda or old Zelda?
Yeah. Well, I started on N64 when I was
Yes.
in grade school, Ocarina of Time.
Mm-hmm.
And then now I
Mm-hmm.
have Nintendo Switch and
Mm-hmm.
was playing Breath of the Wild, and now I'm playing
Breath of the
Tears of the
Wild.
Kingdom, I think. Anyway, whatever the ones are on Switch, it's amazing. The graphics, the music. I love those open world games, so I can
Totally.
get lost in
Yeah.
them sometimes.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Totally. And I love hearing about what folks are kind of, because I think honestly, like, yeah, sure, we all read the business book once in a while and stuff like that, and we listen to whatever and we read whatever. But I think sometimes what really defines somebody and what you learn a lot more about, from people, like what they actually listen to or play or do when they're not working, which I
Yeah.
think is really cool. So,
Yeah. Awesome. Well,
um,
Alex, thank you so much for
y-
having me. It was been really
yeah,
fun.
totally. It's been awesome, and you're a real human that I love talking with and sharing ideas with, and I appreciate what you're doing kind of with the podcast and just in general, like the support you provide to the industry is really cool. So
yeah, well, I love it. And sorry for my ugly cough.
Yeah. I mean, kids. If you have kids, you're sick.
Always.
So thank you for joining me for this episode of the Digital Customer Success Podcast. If you like what we're doing, consider leaving us a review on your podcast platform of choice. It really helps us to grow and to provide value to a broader audience. You can view the Digital Customer Success definition word map and get more details about the show at digitalcustomersuccess.com. My name is Alex Turkovich. Thanks again for joining, and we'll see you next time.